The United Kingdom and Europe wait as Parliament is due to vote on Theresa May's controversial Brexit deal on Tuesday. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition, vows to hold a general election if her deal is rejected. Italian terrorist Cesare Battisti returns on Italian soil in custody. Interior Minister Matteo Salvini says Battisti should now rot in jail for the rest of his life. Tensions between Ankara and Washington hit a new high after President Donald Trump threatens Turkey with economic destruction if they attack Kurds in Syria. Turkey responds that it will not be intimidated. Hello and welcome to the France 24 newsroom. I'm Simon Harding. We start in the United Kingdom, where the time has come for Parliament to vote decisively on Theresa May's Brexit deal. On Tuesday, MPs will opt for withdrawal or will hand the Prime Minister an extension of 3 days to get an improved deal. May and Corbyn once again clashed as the final day of debate raged on in Parliament. The Prime Minister appealed to backbenchers to read her agreement.
Over these next 24 hours, give this deal a second look. No, it is not perfect, and yes, it is a compromise. But when the history books are written, people will look at the decision. People will look at the decision of this House tomorrow and ask, did we deliver on the country's vote to leave the European Union? Did we safeguard our economy, our security and our union? Or did we let the British people down?
We were promised the easiest trade deal in history, yet we've seen a divided government deliver a botched withdrawal deal with nothing more than a vague outline for what our future relationship with the EU will be. Meanwhile, conditions in this country with millions of people continue to get worse.
Well, for more on exactly what the political climate is like in the UK ahead of this landmark vote, let's listen to our correspondent in London, Bénédicte Paviot, who on the doorstep of Parliament reiterated that Theresa May is appealing for a last-gasp push of support.
Her message is simple. There is one deal on the table. It's the one that she has negotiated, and it's the only one that can be approved. And it is good for the country. It keeps the United Kingdom together, and it is good for jobs. So she is effectively pleading with them. And I think the problem for her is that despite all these pleas, these entreaties for them to take a second look at this deal, including the new assurances given by the EU today, which would mean that the backstop is really a temporary measure and that the hope is it would never be used. Her problem is that actually what she's looking at is damage limitation, and we think that it will be a question of by how large a defeat it is, and depending on the size of the defeat, could she then go to Brussels, ask for EU concessions? Would the EU be more receptive? A lot of ifs. If she is defeated and that deal is rejected on Tuesday evening, then she will need to come back to Parliament by Monday and to give her plan B. Meanwhile, the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, is threatening to actually have a vote of confidence, call a vote of confidence in her government. So dramatic scenes, very tense times here in Westminster, in the heart of the British capital.
A British Iranian aide jailed in Tehran is going on a 3-day hunger strike to protest her treatment in the country's notorious Evin prison. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's husband said she's taking action because she's not getting needed access to medical treatment. In 2016, while on a visit to family, Zaghari-Ratcliffe was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in jail after being convicted of plotting to overthrow the government. Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini has said that communist terrorist Cesare Battisti should rot in jail until the end of his life. Battisti has been brought back into Italian custody after his arrest by Interpol in Bolivia last Sunday. He was sentenced in absentia by an Italian court for 4 murders during the 1970s. James Facina has more.
A grim smile from Cesare Battisti as he lands in Italy. After 37 years on the run, police escort the notorious fugitive who'd managed to stay one step ahead of the authorities. To many Italians, Battisti epitomizes years of far-left terrorism.
I hope they lock him up and throw away the keys.
After being sentenced to 12 years in prison in 1979, Battisti escaped 2 years later before seeking refuge in France in 1990. A housekeeper and an author, he lived freely until 2004. During this time, he was sentenced in absentia to life imprisonment. But he regularly claims his innocence on French television, including for the murder of 2 shopkeepers in Milan.
I've been sentenced for crimes that were committed by the organization which I was involved with. That doesn't mean that I was the one who committed them.
Cesare Battisti later fled to South America and spent 10 years living under tight protection in Brazil. But that immunity ceased when Brazil issued an arrest warrant in December, prompting him to flee. Police tapped his phone, accessed his email account and even caught him on camera. After an operation coordinated with Interpol, the 64-year-old was finally arrested on Sunday in Bolivia. The Italian government immediately chartered a plane to extradite him home. Matteo Salvini was quick to acknowledge the Brazilian government's cooperation.
I thank those who made this change possible. The new president of the Brazilian Republic, Jair Bolsonaro, who took away the protection. He is a communist murderer, that's all. For me, he will rot in jail for the rest of his life.
Battisti is currently being heard by the courts. He will be transferred to Oristano prison in Sardinia, where he should, in theory, carry out his life sentence.
The mayor of the Polish city of Gdansk has died after being stabbed at a charity event last Sunday. Paweł Adamowicz was attacked on stage in front of hundreds of people. He was an incredibly popular figure of Polish politics, known for his liberal views. A 27-year-old man has been arrested over the attack. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki described his death as a huge tragedy for Poland. Thousands of people have attended vigils across the country in Adamowicz's honour. The day of his funeral will be observed as a day of national mourning. Turkey have dismissed threats from US President Donald Trump that he would destroy their economy if Ankara attacked Kurdish fighters in Syria. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said they would not be intimidated. The US are beginning their pullout from Syria, with Trump tweeting it was time to end needless wars. Sanam Shantier reports.
Donald Trump and Recep Tayyip Erdogan speaking by phone earlier this Monday about the creation of what's been dubbed a security zone in northern Syria. At the centre of the roadmap, the border town of Manbij. This has been a bone of contention between the NATO allies since the US president announced plans to withdraw all 2,000 troops from the war-torn country. Earlier on Sunday, in a customary tweet, Trump threatened Turkey with economic sanctions. This, if the country attacks an ally of Washington in Syria, that's the Kurdish rebel forces who've been fighting the Islamic State group. Ankara insists that terrorists pose an existential threat. For its part, Turkey dismissed Trump's ultimatum.
We've said this several times before. We're not going to be afraid of any threat and will not bow down. We've said it before, so nothing can be achieved by threatening Turkey economically.
According to some observers, the punitive measures could be compared to those imposed on Tehran.
Nothing would prevent Donald Trump from imposing sanctions similar to Iran on Turkey. Everything from prohibiting international firms from doing business or preventing the use of the dollar in bilateral trade.
The Trump administration has had a rocky relationship with Turkey over the recent months, initially imposing sanctions and trade tariffs in August amid a row over a detained US pastor who was later released.
The root of the rising tensions between Washington and Ankara can simply be traced back to Donald Trump's announcement that US troops would withdraw from Syria. Several senior US military figures resigned in the wake of that announcement. Joshua Landis, the director of Center for Middle East Studies from the University of Oklahoma, looks back at that statement from the president and its repercussions.
It was very dramatic. It got lots of headlines. It caused a lot of friction and clearly threw his entire foreign policy team on their heels. And in some ways, I'm sure Trump likes that, because they were making policy without consulting him. And we've heard in the past how they take policy papers off his desk if they don't want him to see them. So he's, in a sense, taken ownership of this issue. He doesn't know a lot about it and the details, which means that, you know, we see this disarray within the foreign policy apparatus. There's not a lot of consultation, and the whole world is beginning to see who believes what and how they're fighting within the White House, which is something that they usually cannot do. And it really looks very disorganized.
The northern Indian city of Prayagraj is preparing for the Kumbh Mela Holy Festival. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims and several Hindu monastic orders are arriving in Prayagraj, where the river Ganges and river Yamuna, both considered holy, converge. Hindus believe taking a dip or ritualistic bath in the rivers during the Kumbh Mela festival helps attain nirvana and fulfills wishes. Taking place once every 12 years, the ritual dates back to medieval times and is considered the largest congregation of pilgrims in the world. Well, that's all the news we have for now. Thank you very much for watching us on France 24. The debate with François Picard is next. Bye-bye.